Thank you so much. I think this panel discussion focused on the strengthening public sector cybersecurity strategy. And we have a very powerful panel discussion, possibly one of the biggest panel discussion of the day in terms of number of speakers that we have. And this becomes really important given the fact that over the last many years, the digital transformation agenda for various government departments, even for a private organization, has accelerated like never before. And that has also given a lot of space for a cyber vector attack. And the attackers also have now a larger surface to actually explore. And there are different kind of trends we are witnessing. So over the next 30, 40 minutes, we'll try to discuss some of the new trends that we are observing and as to how the government organization can strengthen the cybersecurity postures, how actually some of the things could be automated, and what role the next generation technologies such as AI and high-end automation can play in easing out some of the challenges in the cybersecurity space. So I'll begin with Dr. Rajesh Pant. Sir, if you could share based on your experience, given the fact that you come from an organization which has a humongous responsibility in terms of setting out the contextual and leadership role for the cybersecurity management in the country, what kind of cybersecurity paradigm you are witnessing based on the learning that we have in the pandemic and some of the resiliency that most of the organizations are trying to build into the IT infrastructure?
Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to Economic Times for having us here. Let me start from the space station view, because whatever happens in India is dictated to a great extent by geopolitics. And what we are seeing today, the weaponization of technology, the weaponization of interdependence, what is happening in Eastern Europe, all that has an impact on cyberspace. So that is the first point, that it is not, we cannot deal with national cyberspace with a lot of sovereignty while we want it, but it is affected to a great extent by what is happening all around us. That is point number one. As far as the security aspects are concerned, what we find is that there is an increase in the APT-based, almost state-sponsored threats. That is one sign that is emerging, that the attacks are becoming more targeted, they are more sophisticated. And the second thing is that as far as cyber crime is concerned, there is an entire spectrum of it, right from people losing money in cyber fraud cases to the data thefts and what we are finding is being sold in the dark web, etc. In terms of the threat vectors, two of them stand out. One is ransomware and the other is supply chain attacks. And ransomware, again, while the numbers may be reducing in some cases, but the payouts have increased. That is the inference that we've got from a large number of reports. And we are seeing it here also. We've seen all these attacks in Oil India Limited, and since the focus is on public sector, even the recent AIMS attack and some other public sector undertakings. So ransomware is getting serious, and supply chain attacks, it's not only the solar winds, etc., that started off last year. What we are finding here is that the use of open source software, if you recall that Log4j shell case, where it was used, it's very difficult to find out if there's a malware in the open source software module that we've taken and built it as part of our solutions. So that is another sign that we come against. And I'm not even talking of the latest technologies of AI. Let me conclude by saying that the threat surface is going to increase exponentially in India because of the 5G rollout. If over the world or in the world there were 5 billion internet users, they are very soon going to become 25 million, including the IoT, and I'm including the Industry 4.0 also. So there's an increase in threat surface, which is going to make our task difficult, and those of you who saw me 3-4 years back, I didn't have so much white hair as I've got now. So that is the overall scenario that we are witnessing. In the national cyberspace, you're aware, a lot of initiatives Government of India has taken. Our telecom sector has absolutely been spruced up since the time we implemented the National Security Directive on the telecom sector. Every product that is being put in the national network is a trusted product from a trusted source. This hint has been taken up now by the power sector. The IT part of it, they are taking from us. And the OT part of it, they are again taking an initiative of trusted products from trusted sources. And since I mentioned OT, let me finish by saying that that is the serious part as far as, when we consider critical sectors and what may happen, the impact on OT is much more serious than, just a web defacement or something like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'll go to Mr. Singh now. Mr. Singh, as sir was mentioning about the fact that the complexity of the attack and also the scale of attack has increased like never before. And that really calls for somehow having a newer understanding of the cybersecurity posture that we have. So two things I would like to understand from you. One is, what is your assessment of in terms of the current architecture that we have in terms of dealing the cybersecurity? What new innovation that we can make on that? Second, sir mentioned very important point on OT, and what we are noticing that there is a lot of conversation is being tried between OT and IT, because a lot of innovation has happened in the data analytics space, and OT is something which is air gap, has legacy, and there are effort being made somehow to open up OT to the IT. But cybersecurity is one of the reason why organizations are a bit reluctant. If you could share based on your experience as to how possibly we can make OT even more cyber resilient and secure if we open up to IT.
First of all, it's difficult to boil the ocean. And here is a man who has the responsibility of handling cybersecurity for a country which believes in digital first and believes in digital public goods. So like even in G20, India is talking about digital public goods. While the West has talked of technology as with a profit motive, India has gone ahead and created digital public goods. Be it Aadhaar, be it UPI, you see, everywhere there are large scale implementations. And it's a wonderful thing. But however, when you create such a large infrastructure, you will need to create protection mechanisms around it. And that is happening. So despite what people say about Aadhaar, people say Aadhaar has been breached, so on and so forth, and there are practitioners here who would say that actually Aadhaar has never been breached. What has been breached is this thing which people have created on their own called Aadhaar card. See, Aadhaar is a digital identity. There is no Aadhaar card. People have taken photos of that and uploaded that somewhere on some kind of an insecure bucket. And when that gets leaked, somebody comes up with a huge disinformation campaign, starts saying that Aadhaar has been breached. Aadhaar has not been breached. Because architecturally, Aadhaar has been made in a very secure way, where the main database does not communicate. It talks to a middleware, and based on an API, it gives responses. So it's a wonderful example of creating digital public goods, of creating a national critical infrastructure which is safe and secure and is available at such high levels of productivity. However, if you look at the general public sector or government sector, it suffers from certain disadvantages which are not there in the private sector. First, that whatever companies you see, they are tech first. In government, it is a later entry. Like, it's for facilitation. The outlay on tech is low. The outlay in security is even low. The understanding of security is even low. And the working of the government, in fact, the whole system of procurement of government is very much like, there are some changes like QCBS, but generally it's an L1-based system which does not work in a tech ecosystem. So somewhere we'll have to sort out our procurement if at all we want to appropriately secure. Now, security ultimately means right policy framework, right procedures, awareness, training, incident response, so on and so forth. This is being done. There's a host of people who are sitting here who are doing this. My friend here is creating a national malware repository. I mean, it's a great thing for a country to understand what is hitting us and to be prepared about that. Now, this says that somewhere what should public sector do? So public sector should learn things like, uh, you know, a risk assessment framework and a risk management framework, business continuity practices, and incident response. Similarly, assessment. So, like red teaming may not be very common in public sector. You won't allow somebody to come and check a public sector bank or ONGC, आइए attack कीजिए हमारा system and check कीजिए. But see, NASA does it, Pentagon does it. So we can also start with these things where in a controlled environment, we call people and do good red teaming and understand what is vulnerable and patch it up before probably our neighbors on the two sides start doing it. So having said this, lot is being done. There's one thing I would like to say in the last 5 years, there's a great understanding and great talent which has developed in India about cybersecurity. And I feel that we are on the right path. Coming to OT, I feel two things can be done. One, that OT would be a great part of supply chain attacks, as Sir has already said. This is a great area of concern. You would have seen about the debate around 5G, where the standards, the technology, the hardware, the firmware, everything was developed in China by Huawei. And every Chinese company has this national intelligence law wherein they cannot say no to anything asked by the Chinese government. And it becomes a huge national security risk. That is why India came up with a very cautious kind of 5G implementation. Now 5G is closely linked to OT. So somewhere we will have to understand that we cannot stop totally foreign components because we don't have those, all the chips are being manufactured in either Taiwan or China. We don't have foundries to manufacture chips. Somewhere an emphasis on Make in India both in terms of OT hardware, in terms of OT firmware, and also security systems. I feel that we are still lacking in terms of innovation in cybersecurity. And so none of our great institutions are actually producing any cybersecurity worth any marketability, right? If we are good at cybersecurity, we should be marketing it. But I don't think so that any good Indian cybersecurity product is competing with anybody in the market. So I feel that Make in India, the whole architecting of digital public goods, and a policy framework with procedures, with awareness, training, incident response is an answer to cyber threats.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Sharma, I'll come to you because there is a lot of innovation has happened in the cloud space, and somehow the cloud has become a kind of de facto platform for innovation. So even for a air gap environment like yours, there is some level of excitement to experiment with the cloud per se as a platform. Would you like to share some of your experience in terms of the cybersecurity management when there is a lot of push-up and zeal within the team and outside to experiment with the cloud?
It's why there was a bit of a laugh there was a bit of a laugh from both of us, is that you actually asked a person who's having quite contrary views with regard to cloud. Now let's understand the perspective. To tell you very frankly, when you say security, the best form of security, and I still believe it, air gap is the best form of security, that still remains. Having said so, a lot of things have changed. We are evolving. Digital informationization is part of our journey because that is how we have progressed. COVID-19 altogether changed the parameters. For example, classically, if you see, we were very much parameter-centric kind of security organizations. Everywhere it was the same. But COVID clearly, made things to be done in the way in which things were not there. You never saw, work from home typically in a government environment. But yes, you had to do it. So, does the classical paradigms of security work? I would say no. The classical paradigms of security need to be changed. For example, fundamentally, if you see and I'm not saying about public sector entities, in general, even in private sector, most of your security was always parameter-centric. But now you are moving to a paradigm of what is called as, software-defined parameter, or what we call as a zero-trust architecture. Why these things were required? Because somewhere down the line, those very strong red lines between the air gap and the cloud, these are delineating. Now, when we talk about cloud, and that's again one of the very big misnomers which keep on coming. Whenever the first thing that comes to our mind is AWS, and that's it, or let's say Azure Cloud, and it's not that I want to be a vendor specific. It's the Google Cloud and so. But clouds implementations are also, there are various types of clouds that need to be implemented. You know, some are purely internet-based public clouds. Then you have private clouds that are there. And then there is something called as hybrid clouds that are there. Each of these implementations are very much pro to the organizational policies. What exactly they need to transact, how much that need to be there. To be honest, over a period of time, now I believe that the time has come where we need to move out of the classical ways where parameterization is given the primality to a place when we need to embrace this new technology, but with appropriate security controls in mind. Security, if you are asking about cloud, it's, yes, functionality-wise, cloud is the game, but it should be security by design, integrated and implemented, primarily keeping in view that both the things are added upon. Zero trust architecture is something that we definitely need to go, specifically with regard to the public sector enterprises. You know, we cannot be based on the classical parameter-based things and so on. So we are evolving, and as things are evolving, but nevertheless, what Sir said, I fully agree with you. The next realm of threats are primarily the OT space. That would be, because the kinetic effect, the physical effect, that's the key point that we need to look into. And 5G, trust me, 5G changes the game altogether, because now you'll have much larger informationization, because you'll have the network that supports it. So that's changing the game. You are having what we call as quantum computing, and quantum computing, your classical encryptions that you are working on, trust me, they will be rendered useless until and unless you migrate into what is called as quantum resistant cryptography or post-quantum cryptography. Because like your classical AES and all that, quantum is going to change the game altogether. And AI, chat, GPT and all that, you're looking into the one aspect of it. But introduction of that particular AI, primarily with context of red teaming, and I'm purely from a very benign sense, I'm using the word red teaming. If you move it to one step ahead into the adversarial part, trust me, we are yet to see something. 2023, 2024, and 2025, for security point of view, they will be the game changer years, because the way in which technology is coming is revolutionizing.
Absolutely. Dr. Gupta, I'll come to you. Earlier, Mr. Singh mentioned about the digital public goods that India has been able to set up, especially in the form of Aadhaar, UPI, Co-win platform, and some of the work that we are doing, even in relation to the ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce, which has a huge potential to democratize the way the e-commerce will be done across the globe. That also opened up a lot of challenge from a security perspective, as Sir said. Would you like to share, based on your experience, given the fact that you worked across NIC from an e-governance perspective also, and these days with the National Intelligence Grid, what kind of trend are you witnessing, both in the air gap as well as normal e-gov environment?
Good afternoon, Pant, and all other eminent personalities here sitting in the panel, and all the viewers. You have raised a very important question, basically. What we have to think, whether we have to create air gap networks or we have to implement some kind of virtual aspects in the present networks. So I feel that there are three things: people, process, and technology, which makes three important factors for implementation. And as you know, that the people level, that is at the client level, client security is the most important, where we are highly reluctant. We want to implement the application immediately. You all might be knowing that immediately the government orders comes, tomorrow CM is going to inaugurate a particular portal. So whether, has it been audited? Has it been, even hash has not been created, and the portal has been hosted and being accessed by a particular client. So first of all, the most important aspect is that we have to have our clients fully secure. which are highly vulnerable. They can be done by various technologies. If I name, you can use a particular network, basically, which are a standard form of network such as the NIC network, which may be considered in views that it is not a safe network. But I say, considering our situation at our country, we consider that is the most important and most trustable network which we have. So if we can use certain concept of VDI, which has been used during the corona period, and we consider that VDI concept is being used through, if we use it through the NIC network, so the networks of the organizations can be saved. And using VDI application, the channel, which is basically between the UAG and the client, can be saved as an encrypted channel. I accept that quantum computing is going to give you a lot of threats, but it's a cat and mouse game. So we have to work in that direction. And as far as the strategies are concerned, we have to establish and we have to see that which organization is going to use which kind of security. Because security is a word which can be accepted, that everyone, as he said, zero trust network has to be established. Yes, it has to be established. At what cost? What is the objective of the organization? And what is the data they are going to use that? So the classification of data is also very, very important. If, let us say, if it is, we are using a top secret or secret confidential secret data, we have to use on the networks some SAG graded encryptors, which again can be used for a high level of encryption, and the data can be transferred on that networks. However, if we are using a data classification as confidential or below that, then we can use a simple TLS, which is again TLS 1.3 or so, which is acceptable in the national level encryption, channel encryption level. Not only this, the network has to carry basically if you see that the data should be encrypted. This is my feeling. So whenever we work on that, the data encryption is a most important aspect. But the people say that after that, when it comes to the main center, where again the security is important aspect. So all parameter security, whether it is a intrusion prevention detection system, which is going to be implemented, or through firewalls, whether it is north-south or east-west-south, firewalls are being used. Those firewalls can give you a security and give you alarms. But again, we have to have a very important aspect that is called SOC. So our SOC should be such, we should adopt the best practices of the nation and can give you alerts of different nature, which can give you the cyber threats available at that time. Not only this, I would like to highlight that all the organizations should come up with a CCMP plan, that if there is a crisis management, how to do that, how to prevent that, how to do the recovery, how to identify. So these are some important things which are very, very important, I feel. And VDI, I would like to highlight the data classification. Right now the issue is coming in the present scenario as far as cyber security threats are coming, that when we are doing transferring the data or we are doing the analysis of data, data has to be in the simple data form. But now presently the work is on and research are on encrypted data analysis. So I have also written one paper on encrypted data analysis. So if we are able to come with a final solution that the entire encrypted data analysis can be done, it will be a very good solution for transferring of data where the hackers can or the cyber threats can come up to the minimal level. So this is what I thought I'll share with you in this regard. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Antony, I'll come to you as Mr. Gupta talked about the fact that there are different kind of challenges, and one of them happens to be, despite the best security solution that you have, there is no silver bullet as such. You are likely to be hit, so there has to be a mechanism. It should not take a week time for an organization to get back, that we witnessed in one of the last attack, more than a week time to server to be running again. And those challenges happen because of the fact that we do have shortage on the capacity building part within our public sector environment, where as Mr. Singh earlier mentioned about the cyber security specialist, there is a lack of that. How actually our public sector organization, in your view, incorporate some of the values and some of the system in place in order to improve the capacity building part? At least some of the things they should be able to address themselves.
Thank you. So for the capacity building, just like cybersecurity, there is no silver bullet. We have to build it brick by brick, and there is no shortcut. And so the gap, as you mentioned, between the demand and supply of manpower. So we should have a two-prong approach there. One is to reduce the demand. Second is to increase the availability. So how to increase availability is what we are saying. We should have these capacity building exercises. And in public sector, already people are there. We should groom them and train them into cybersecurity expertise, because nobody is born as an expert, or same is the case with nobody is enrolled as a cybersecurity experts. So the good manpower in each organization may be trained in that level, so that we'll have a supply. And how to reduce the demand is we should have a collaboration, and instead of duplicating and creating too many silos, we should have a collaboration and innovation that will reduce, so that what I am good at, maybe if I am running a hospital, I should concentrate on that part rather than the IT of that part also. So there should be a collaboration. That is the major, so that will fill up a lot of gap. And then, just as security awareness building will reduce a lot of demand. Means, if everybody is taking COVID vaccine, the number of patients will come down. That will reduce the load on the hospitals. So like that, the citizen or the employees may be educated on the hygiene part of it, so that the existing experts may not be so much pressed. So these are the approaches we can follow to the problem you mentioned.
Mr. Duggal, I'll come to you, because most of the discussion that we are having somehow revolve around the data. So data is a key piece actually we would like to preserve. And there is one aspect of which is that there is a cyber security attack, and then we need to get out of that. But also from a regulatory perspective, from a law perspective, we should have a broader understanding of in terms of the data and how to manage, fix the responsibility and accountability. If something goes wrong, there should be a mechanism to deal with that. And in many of the cases, we notice that even the department do not share, experience with each other, and there is hardly any learning among them. Thank God we have the National Cyber Security Coordinator from the Prime Minister's office, and there are a lot of things from the CERT and NCC going to different government departments and PSUs, and these departments are now being very proactive in terms of cyber security management. Could you share, based on the kind of dialogue that you see in our country from a data security, privacy and management perspective, what is your assessment? Are we on right track from a law perspective? Because law has to be in place in order to set a lot of things that we have been discussing.
Thanks. I think from a legal perspective, India is miles behind, primarily because we have not yet learned our lessons from the global ecosystem. Look at China. 6 years, 3 national legislations on cybersecurity, umpteen number of secondary legislations. Look at small countries like Vietnam, who have a dedicated new law on cybersecurity. Look at Singapore. Look at Australia, who has a law on anti-encryption. Look at Thailand. And look at the Western world. So Western world has been more conservative. They're more focusing on incident response mechanism, legal notifications, rather than dedicated national cybersecurity laws. On the other hand, on this part of the world, we have Chinas of the world who are saying, look, through my national cybersecurity laws, I'm now coming up with very extensive and expansive definitions of the concept of cyber sovereignty. So India, when I come to India, I find that there's a huge policy vacuum. Why? We are only relying upon the Information Technology Act 2000 to really do wonders. But please realize this is a law that's 23 years old. This was the law that the Parliament never passed, keeping in mind cybersecurity. Though the amendments in 2008 did come up with a definition of cybersecurity, and we came up with some cosmetic provisions. By and large, India lacks any dedicated legal framework on cybersecurity. And that's beginning to hurt and bleed. Last year, every 11 seconds, a company in India was getting hit by a ransomware attack. The AIMS attack was one attack that was basically catapulting everybody's attention to what's going to be happening. Now, the recent attack on this manufacturer of the Ministry of Defense, you suddenly start realizing the dots, and you start realizing the focus is on somehow prejudicially impacting the security, sovereignty, integrity of India, and Indian cyber sovereignty interests per se. Now, for those things in mind, I don't think that we have in place legal frameworks. For the last many years, I've been advocating India requires a dedicated law on cybersecurity, which has to be supplementing to the Information Technology Act. What we are doing is we are trying to go round the bend. We are now coming up with rules and regulations under the IT Act for the purposes of filling up the lacuna on cybersecurity, which has not been a great experiment. To give an example, we had the IT Rules 2021, which not just expanded the entire issue of accountability and transparency of intermediaries, but mandated them, number one, to report all cybersecurity incidents. Number two, to assist everything in the investigation of cybersecurity breaches. Come October 2022, and you now have amendments to these rules. And these rules amendments say, look, you shall not only inform your users that please don't do anything in violation of the law, but more significantly, you will also have to take reasonable steps to prevent your users from doing any activity which is in violation of the law. Now, if I look at it from a basic standpoint, when I breach into your computer system or network, at the end of the day, I'm doing nothing but a computer-related offense under Section 66 read with Section 43 of the Information Technology Act. But then it's a bailable offense. You are entitled to bail as a matter of right. So there's no deterrence that's currently on. Look at the manner how we've gone through the IT Directions 2022. Now the directions and the IT Rules 2021 have injected a new color to the landscape which was earlier non-existing. This was the color of criminal prosecution. Earlier, the system was not aware of criminal prosecution. Right now, thanks to this IT Directions 2022, from 28th of June 2022, if you are any of the 5 entities, if you're a body corporate, if you're a government organization, if you're a data center, if you're a network service provider or an intermediary, and you come to know of a cybersecurity breach, you will have to mandatorily report it within 6 hours to the nodal agency on cybersecurity, being the Computer Emergency Response Team of India. You don't report it, no problem. At the end of 6 hours, you automatically commit an offense under Section 70B of the Information Technology Act, punishable with 1 year's imprisonment and fine. Now, what that effectively means is that for all the PSUs, they come to know about it, and the reason is very simple. You will come to know about it through an email, through a message, some kind of an electronic record. Now, if you start deleting that record, you again commit forgery. So that's another offense punishable with 7 years imprisonment and fine under Section 468 of the Indian Penal Code. So the moment you cross that 6-hour period, you now have a Damocles sword hanging on your head for the next 7 years, because the Supreme Court says if you commit an offense, in the next 7 years, criminal prosecution can be started. Now, if that happens, now suddenly people are going to be in a state of either inactivity or no activity or very hyper proactivity. So that's one area that's not getting very, very good kind of attraction. Somewhere down the line, it'll have to be a cohesive mix. Right. You'll have to have more capacity building. You'll also have to sensitize users per se. We will have to come up with legal frameworks. The IT directions have been a good step forward because at least we are filling up the lacunas that exist. But then please understand, the nature of the animal is such that we require a new mechanism for dealing with it. And now with ChatGPT coming in, with new malwares being generated by ChatGPT for breaching cybersecurity, we have a completely new problem area at hand. Therefore, I believe the legal policy and regulatory issues have to be thoroughly addressed. Right. All kudos and all salutations to the IT Act, right. But then this 23-year-old legislation was never meant for cybersecurity. We require new legal approaches in this regard.
Right, right. We're completely exhausted our time. Last word to you, Dr. Pant.
Firstly, I think we need a longer session to discuss these important aspects. But I've always been saying there are 3 hard truths of cyberspace. One, that vulnerabilities will continue to exist, and the fact that there is softwareization increasing, the vulnerabilities will increase. The second is, as long as there are vulnerabilities, attacks will continue. And third is that the attribution of these attacks will be as difficult as what it is today. If this is what the scenario is going to be, the solution lies in creating resilience. And there are various ways of creating resilience, including all the aspects that he mentioned of people, process, and technology. And there's a lot of work to be done, including in the legal aspects. I think for the public sector, they must understand from the people point of view that education and awareness, audits are very important before the incident takes place. Incident response and remediation is important. From the technology point of view, you have to address the endpoint, the network, the data center, as well as the applications. So people, process, and technology all have to be addressed in case we want a safe cyberspace. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being such a wonderful panelist and sharing your views on cybersecurity and as to how the public sector organization can strengthen their cybersecurity posture. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jose.